I am looking at my next slide here, and it's a Canaanite high place at Megiddo. And there it is, right there, boom. The high place is pretty well, gone, but because of size, measurements, and all things that were found around us, and the steps coming up to it, this is what's commonly known as a high place. And, of course, that's where they worshipped. And we're talking probably about Canaanites here. It's too early to be Israelite. And so everybody has their gods, I suppose, in all of this. And I move on then to the next slide. Incidentally, out to the right there and down is the Valley of Armageddon, of course, at Megiddo. Very famous site. The Egyptians were there for a lot of time. This is interesting here because I saw this when it was just being assembled. That's a four-horned altar that was found at Beersheba. So we're South Judah now. And its stones are kind of look irregular because it had been reused and made into a wall. So the archaeologists found it and started picking up the pieces and rebuilt it the best they could. You can't see it well, but there's a snake down in lower, right on the left side at the corner there at the bottom, which would give you a clue that this may not be Israelite worship. A snake, they had one in the Garden of Eden, And the thing was, I got there right at the time before they had even gotten to the Jerusalem Post, had even written it up, and I got on the plane, came home, and then my copy of the Jerusalem Post showed up. So I knew what the news was all about because I was there before it happened, or something like that. Anyway, you get the idea. I had my director stand at the back at that last place there because actually that's only a three-horned altar. His name was Siegfried Horn, so the fourth horn was on the altar. We try to do the best we can. All right, we're going on now to, next slide, please. I believe Abraham walked through this gate. I really do, dating-wise, the time. You're talking Genesis 14. Dan is there. I wrote my BD thesis on Genesis 14 at Talbot Seminary, where John MacArthur went, incidentally, and a few other friends of mine. Josh McDowell, too. And that date, the gate on the Tel Dan gate there is in the Middle Bronze Age, so somewhere between 2195 1992, about 2000 BC. And it didn't have that top on it when I saw it. That's all been done to protect it from the rain and so forth. But that's the Tel Dan gate. And it would be at least, in Genesis 14 up to verse 20, up to chapter 24, would be about what you'd have there. Move on, please. One of the fields that's open to everybody that I think anyone should understand, you don't have to study archaeology. Write this down. What you want to do is study manners and customs of the Bible. That's a great one because that talks about clothing and people and what the average folks were actually doing. And there's a study all on its own without the technical stuff that I run into. And it's quite legitimate. Here's a lady with her rope that she's putting down a well. The sheep are there on her left. It's not the best picture I ever took. In fact, I didn't take this one. I get slides from everywhere. I get them from the Biblical Archaeology Review. I get them from different sources. Some people have given me some. Some I took myself. I took lots and lots of slides. I have thousands of them. The good thing about my slides is I've taken pictures of places that have been vandalized since then, and you can't see them in reality anymore. So slides are good for something. At any rate, she's getting water. That's a very standard thing. Think of Genesis 29, 1 to 10. That would be Rachel and Jacob at the well. Or Luke chapter 2, verse 7. Next slide, please. Now, I've really gone ahead. I'm out of the Bible, actually. This is the Dome of the Rock. I've talked about it before as the place where Isaac was offered. But I throw that in here because of the magnitude of history and the way things went, Dome of the Rock, of course, is a Muslim shrine. The place they worship is next door. It's called the Aqsa Mosque, A-Q-S-A. You know that I definitely suspicion that they're moon worshipers. What is that on the very top of the building? You see it on all the minarets and everything. It's the moon, the symbol of the moon. I could get lost in that subject. It's not what I'm here for tonight. At any rate, that is very beautiful. You go inside, and it's got the so-called Rock of Abraham. And it's surrounded by partitions. You have to kind of look around through to see the rock, And there's a lot of rugs around. And there is a, can I be kind and call it a myth? It's a myth. Concerning Muhammad, that he had a mode of transportation, to put it mildly, of a it wouldn't pass inspection in the Air Force. Heaven, so-called, where he had audience with Allah. And that's their story that comes out of that. They believe it, too. So, anyway, this is called the Haram Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary. It's in Jerusalem, and it's right there. And, of course, just outside it is the wall, which is Herod's wall, the western wall of the temple. So no wonder they're so closely situated that you have rock fights and things happen over that wall, and down on them, for that matter, the continuing problems that they have in the Arab-Israeli war, and wars and intifadas and fights and stuff. But the Jews go to the wall, and they come with their Bibles, with their Torah, and their prayer books, and they dove it. You ever seen that on TV, where they kind of rock back and forth? And they have their headgear on, they have their talit, their prayer shawl, and they have their yarmulke on the back of their head. In fact, when you go there to the Wailing Wall, as it's called, they will give you a paper one, maybe a bobby pin to keep it on, And I've been there and stood right at the wall, and they put their prayers in there, chink them in the stones. Then some enterprising tourist will take one of those out and look at it and bring it to the Hebrew teacher in California, and say, "What does this say?" And I say, "Look, leave the people's prayers in the wall. Don't bring them to me, Seems sacrilegious somehow. And sometimes I can read them and sometimes I don't. Okay, next slide. Now, I've gone from the out there to right in the middle of your heart. This is the top of Golgotha, basically. It's underneath the dome of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The church was built after the resurrection. Jesus, the whole hill of Calvary was flattened, and they built a temple to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. That's what the Romans did. And then Helena, the mother, was she not, of Constantine, if I have the story right, she scraped off that and built, this Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's big inside. And if I walk in the front door, I will... it's kind of like the door right here. I'll walk in the front door, and here's Calvary, up some steps. And then I come down into the main part of the room, and here's what's called the edicule, E-I-D-C-U-L-E, edicule. That's a nifty name for like a little church almost. Looks kind of like that. And you go through the door, and better duck because it's low. I bump my head on these things all the time. And inside there is another door in there, and then there's this slab, and the slab is supposed to indicate where Jesus was laid out when he died. But I don't believe all that's exactly any more than symbolic at that point. But they have done studies about this little building with all kinds of modern detection, orthoscopic and magnetometer, and you know better than I, the kind of things that can see down around in little spaces. And it's some good books are coming out on the authenticity of this little building and in there. And I myself believe that Jesus rose through the grave clothes. Wasn't Cecil B. DeMille with some kind of paper or something strung out, or a towel or something strung out, or part of the wrappings that blow away somewhere like the movies say. But I believe he rose through the grave clothes. And it was orderly in the tomb. And his headpiece, it's called a soldarion in Greek, was lying there peacefully. It was not all rumpled up and everything. So that's the way Jesus left. There's a lot of other exciting stories I could tell about that, but I must hurry on. At any rate, we are nothing without the resurrection, you know that. And there are people who deny that today everywhere you can look. It's incredible. Well, next slide. Oh, yeah, once in a while I had to assume the posture of a bringer of good news. And I had one coat, and I had one tie, a lot of sunburn on my burned up face. And it was a Southern Baptist school. And no, this had to be another one. I was with a bunch of Adventists. And Adventists are great people to dig with because you give you a double weekend. You get a Saturday and a Sunday. And they treated me real well. And like I say, that the Adventist people that I worked with were from Harvard. They were very, very PhD and wonderful guys. So I decided that I could get along with them just fine. I have a soft spot in my heart for them, but I know about Miller in 1844. Look it up. Okay. So where are we now? Oh, okay. Very good. Now, have I made my jump to the new set here? No. Okay. I'll be all right once I'm better. Dead Sea Scrolls, Israel Museum. All right. We can talk about this forever. That right there, I believe, is Isaiah 40, verse 2 to 28. You must know the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Tell me you do. Somebody says, I never heard of it. What? What are you talking here? Well, at the time they were found, that was Jordan, not Israel. So you had to have a different accent for that. Parchment, sheepskin, scratched on one side, whatnot, to make writing paper. Carbon-based ink. Don't give me my picture. I don't want to look at myself. I'm cool here. This was a copy of Isaiah, all of it, folks, from front to back, complete. The most absolutely realistic copy of the Old Testament. What is its significance? Well, before this was found in 1946, 47, right in there, by Bedouin, who didn't know anything about anything, but they found these scrolls wound up tight like that in urns in what we now call Cave 1. And they took them, it's a long story, they took them to their antiquities dealer, and every time they get changed hands, they went more expensive all the time. But the Hebrew University finally got them. And the significance of it is that before that discovery, most important discovery, I think, in all time for Bible, at least Old Testament, the oldest manuscripts we had was something called the Leningrad Codex, which is about 1000 AD. And there was also an Aleppo Codex, which was not complete, but it was excellent too. I worked for an outfit called West Semitic Research that was part of USC, and I'm a Bruin too, which is really tough. But I went to work in disguise, worked for USC for about 18 months. And they had gone to Russia, and they had photographed the Leningrad Codex, and there are copies of that available. They're expensive, I suppose, still, but I got one. They gave me one. I was working for them. So from about 1000 AD to how about 150 BC? 150 BC. Jesus was born, 4, 5, 7 BC. Here is Isaiah complete. And not only this, but it's so realistic because you know how some religions have their manuscripts or something come down from someplace and they come into a column of light and stop in the middle of the room, no problems, no, it's inerrant and da-da-da. This fellow right here, this we're looking at, has got a line, count the spaces between lines. So 1, 2, 3, over. You see there the lower half, that line that's vertical? That was a boo-boo. He left out a line. This is a real live scribe doing a real live text. And again, I believe in the development or the typology of everything. So we have pottery styles that change. We have writing styles that change. I could write A for you from 1850 BC and show you all the A's that happened all the way down to the A we use today. The A of 1850 BC in a place in Egypt that I know about that was also worked on by my WSR, West Semitic Research, would look like that. And the A is an alpu or an aleph or an ox. And you take that and turn it over in Greek and a whole bunch of other changes, and it winds up like that. The history of writing. The history of an alphabet. So that you can tell what kind of writing that was by time from the style of the letters. The geniuses do it, and some of us can, not geniuses, we try at it too. And that being a boo-boo is like saying this is a real thing that happened. It was really copied. It wasn't copied perfectly, and I think that's wonderful. And we go from 1,000 years, we go back and see what the text looked like 1,000 years before all we had. Now, I do need an amen on that. Amen. Thank you, all you Baptists. I appreciate it. At any rate, this stirs my soul. If I wanted to see this, I go to the Israel Museum. They have it, a copy, all around this whole ring. And you go up on a little kind of platform and you can stand there and look at it. And of course, it's in Hebrew. Yeah. And you say, well, don't they have the real thing there? No, the real thing is under completely wonderful climate control and moisture control situation down in the ground where it belongs. It's kept at a certain everything. Because I've seen pictures of this stuff before and after. And you got a text here, and then you've got the text taken from other cameras years later, and it's beginning to turn into sort of a gelatinous goo around the edges, start to be eating in like that. Because it's in shock. It was kept in dry Dead Sea. Down the Dead Sea, it's jolly dry down there. It doesn't rain, except that one year I was there, it rained real hard. First time in 50 years. That was different. And up in Jerusalem, the snow was breaking the branches off the trees. At any rate, I can't underline that too much. Where are we now? Dead Sea Scroll. Okay. Well, that's where I end my first half. This man's a fool. He's out in the wilderness of Judea. At that point, we were riding around in Jeeps and stuff with a group from Cal State Long Beach. And I know we were looking for the Wadi Kidron, or the water that runs from Jerusalem all the way down to the Dead Sea. And I looked out here over the edge of our little Jeep we had. Something round down there. It was a landmine. I said, hey, fellas, I think we're close to a landmine here. He says, we better move. Okay. But that happened just before that picture. All right. It's okay to go on to number 2, huh, brother? This is the second half I should have had after we started our coffee. I'm not too far behind. I want to take you to a whole different place. I want to transfer you back in time. Ah, I love it. I love it. Where's the, yeah, okay. In 1988, I went to Tel Mozan with my old Akkadian teacher, that is cuneiform stuff. His name, he wasn't French, in Syria. This is Tel Mozan, Syria. He wasn't French because the Syrians don't like the French. He wasn't, of course he wasn't Jewish. What? But of course they have Jews in Syria. They have Jews everywhere. They have Jews in Iran, for that matter. But it was Syria, and his name was Giorgio Bucciolati. I would like for people today, if you want to get a picture of what's happening, you've got all these marvelous Bucci. I can't even spell his name, much my own. Bucciolati. There's only one C. I'll be all right once I'm better. Yeah, I know. 2 C's, no H. He'd kill me if he'd see I couldn't even spell his name. I did grad studies at UCLA in languages, and I loved it. I tried to study that cuneiform, like I say, but I went on to study Ugaritic, which is alphabetic. You got an alphabet. Ugaritic is not exactly a family name either, or a well-known name, but that's Syria, 1400, 1200 BC. And this stuff is alphabetic. Now we've got things like A, B, something like this, B. I know that shalom would look kind of like ta-da, 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 ta-da. Shalom, shalom, shalom. He's lost, folks. Get a stretcher. Shalom. That's not too bad. That's SH and L and M. And of course, you read all this, Hebrew and everything, you read from right to left. You knew that, didn't you? You say the poor man has been studying right to left. In Egypt, they actually did this. They wrote right to left, then they went down here and went back left to right, and then back like that with hieroglyphics. No wonder everybody's cross-eyed in the whole country, You think I'm kidding? That's a mess, I'm sorry. Anyway, Bucciolati's got 2 L's in his name. Anyway, that's so you look him up, see? He's still around. He's still alive. He works, he's retired, but he's quite a story. He was one of the world's top 10 Assyriologists. I said, I'm a nobody, but I work with and learn from great teachers. All right. Terrible. Next slide, please. Whoops. What happened to the Anzu? Did we have the Anzu? The blue was, can you back up one? Oh, that's one, all right. All the way to the front? Oy vey, what? Ah, that is the Anzu. Now, I'm taking you to Mesopotamia. I'm taking you to Syria. We haven't been there yet. This is made of, it's a lion-headed eagle, and it's made of lapis and gold, lapis lazuli and gold. It's from the palace of Mari in Syria. Now I can draw a map. Come erase for me, and we'll draw a map of Syria. Well, it's okay. I won't get any pay either, so, you're all right. I won't have any to share. Then I won't have any breakfast either, so. Okay. Syria. I love Syria. Why would he love Syria? I have a guy that sits next to me every morning in church. He's from Syria. I said, well, where's the beginning of your church? Where did it start? He says, Antioch. Well, that's only where Paul started. I mean, this guy's got an old tradition he's writing, you know. And Syria kind of does like so. This is Lebanon down here. And it comes down to along about, Israel's about in here someplace. And we go that whole long border with Turkey. I'm overdoing it, out here to where, we cross the Euphrates back in here. And then we come on out here. And we're about 50 miles. I was about in here, about 50 miles from the Tigris. That is Iraq. So the border is right about in there someplace. And this would be Turkey, and this is Syria. And that point there, this goes off down this way. Damascus is right here, big D. It's not Dallas. And Palmyra that you've heard about, Palmyra was called Tadmor in antiquity. That was like their golden best place, Palmyra. Did you read about it in the paper? ISIS went in there and beat it all up to pieces, even beheaded the old director there, some 70-year-old guy who'd been there forever. They gave him the ISIS treatment. And we took it back from them, we being the Iraqi Free Army and the good guys. And with U.S. help, I suppose. And then they took it back. Last I know, I think they've taken it back. But they had big pillars and wonderful, wonderful things here. And a Roman period, see, Roman period still, city that was the most beautiful place of antiquity, one of the great places. And, of course, you got Damascus here, and you got Hama, then you got Halaf, and then you got Aleppo. And, of course, Aleppo has been turned into ashes completely, as we all know. And what they're doing now is they're going into Mosul over here, is where the army is now. They've taken the eastern half of the city, but not the west. The west is hard to do because the buildings are all too close together. And a road, there's no roads between the buildings. All you got is room about for a door. So can you do hand-to-hand combat there? Pray for your American people, and anybody else is fighting those guys. That's terrible. But right in here is Mosul, and just about in here someplace is Raqqa. And that's where they've had their headquarters there for ISIS. And I had a roommate when I was at Mosul right here. And where was he from? He was from Raqqa, 1988. But we did get there about 4 months after Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurds. So how did we get in there? Well, we were Italian, as far as everybody knew. And we were well represented there. Bucciolati had dug down in Turka, another site. He had a really good reputation there. He was very, very sweet with the people. The man was rich. Bucciolati silver. Got some simoleons, you know. And so all that worked for our advantage. But we were living in the police state. We couldn't just run around and go shopping and do crazy things. They watched us pretty closely, and we had to kind of turn our passports in, and then we got out. When we left the country, we pick them up. But we had our heads down. We kept on working. We were not trying to cause any trouble. And we had our jobs to do, and we knew it. And it was tough work. Anyway, all that for Syria. Huh? Okay, I'll get down there. So this bird is from the palace of Mari, M-A-R-I, which is right about here. A wonderful site that is well known, thousands of years. And you know, Mari could talk to Egypt, El Amarna, over here, where Akhenaten, the Pharaoh with the long face, you know about him? He had Marfan's disease. Elongated features and fingers. El Amarna. And they could talk to each other, and they were doing this cuneiform from Amarna to a place called Hatzor in Israel, this way and over to Mari. And they were talking administrative documents and stuff like that. And I've got a son-in-law. He lives right here. His name is John Rinks. And he's been digging with Amnon Ben-Tor in Chatzor. And I get to get the reports from him firsthand. They're looking for the archive, where they would bring together their businesses and all of their da-da-da on clay tablets, I take it. There may be an archive, they believe, and there may be two even. And they're excited because this year they're going to get to some pay dirt, I think. They came down a whole distance twice and missed it both times in digging down for the archive with hopes that they'd find it. And John Winks is very excited about Hatzor. And do we have the conversations around the house? I just talked to him last night, you know. It's nice to have it in the family. So I'm passing the baton on to John Rinks. My daughter Bonnie went one season to Jordan, and she was lucky, awfully lucky. She had the best pottery of anybody around in 1984. Anyway, I digress. I have a T-shirt that says, I digress. My wife bought it for me. I also have one that says, yes, dear. You know, that's. You don't have to be specific. It's all right. Time for questions. Okay. Am I going to be done? I've gotten really off here. Talk to me, Chief. Time to start Q&A right here. 5 more minutes. Okay. Next slide. Sargon of Akkad. I think this is wonderful. I won't tell you how it's made because it takes too long to do. Yes, please. Well, no. We're still around Syria. Don't worry. Or someplace. We're in the Middle East. We're not in Israel. This is Sargon of Akkad. Akkad is in Babylon. That would be Iraq. Notice the detail. It's made out of copper. About somewhere around 2500, 2400 BC. It's a long time ago, folks. Next slide. I'm not even going to look at my notes. I'm just going to look at this. This is called the peace panel, or the standard of Ur. Probably that whole picture deal there is made of ivory in part. And a guy would come down the aisle with a scepter of some kind or a big stick, and that thing would be on the top of it in some of their ceremonies. And you've got gifts being brought to the king. And, of course, they're all wearing those little doodad kind of dresses because it's hotter than hot there. And that's what they look like, subtropical. Kind of like a day at Palm Springs or wherever you want to be hot. Okay. Now, here again is one of those votive types. This would be like the sun god or something or other. And you see he's got that little dress thing on. Keep going. I'm in a rush now, I guess. Oh, this is the Code of Hammurabi. That's worth about a week-long discussion. That's in the Louvre in Paris. I've seen it. It's 8 foot. It's basalt or diorite. It's a stela, we call it, or a standing monument. And it's got Shamash on the right, who's the sun god, and Hammurabi on the left. I wrote term papers about Hammurabi. I must be out of my mind. And the king is, bringing offerings, or he's talking to the god himself. Now, if you want to read it, you got to do this. Next slide, please. More cuneiform, but you'll get a crook in your neck because you got to read it like this. You got to look at it sideways. So when we got copies of it, we translated about 2/3 of it. And the first law of the Code of Hammurabi says, if a man accuses another man of murder and the case is shown that he accused him wrongly, that is, he was lying or he was wrong or whatever, then the man who did the accusing would die. Idak, it says. I'd rather have Moses' law than this, I think. It's a lot more severe in many ways. Anyway, keep going. Yeah. This is, of course, gold dagger, and it is Sumerian and has lapis lazuli. I can't say that right anymore. It's that blue stone. It's very, very precious. And it comes from Ur of the Chaldees, there where Abraham was from, 26th century BC. And it's very beautiful. But that, see, would probably be more ceremonial than anything else. Next slide. Oh, that was my hotel accommodations in Damascus. We went for a very middle-sized, it wasn't fancy first class treatment, because we didn't want to spend money on this kind of thing, staying there. We wanted to spend our money on the dig itself, so I didn't mind. That was pretty nice compared to a lot of places I've slept. At any rate, that's where we were. Hotel Sultan in Damascus. And down the street was, next slide. This is the souk in Damascus. It's the Umayyad souk. A souk is a marketplace. Umayyad is one of the dynasties of the Muslims. I can spell Arabic better than I can English tonight. That's right. And this is a fantastic place. They say the Mahdi, their view of the Messiah, the Muslim Messiah, is going to return to the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. And then they say 12 other things, so I'm not sure what's right. But that's what that is. And this is the entrance to it. They have a covered bazaar there where I bought a dish dash, I call it. It's a full-length garment for down. And I got an abaya. The abaya is the one that's got the gold trim on the black. You'll see that all the time in the news and stuff. And I have kufiyas of different colors like that, I say. I go and give shows at churches and stuff. One kid saw me coming one day and he said, "Hey, Mom, there's a guy wearing a dress, Now I think it probably happens all the time. I don't know. The way things have gone lately. But that's it. I'm done. Time for questions. All right, I will stop right there.